All right, and hello to all of you that are listening on the recording and the few that have decided to join us live. I'm SAPPHIRE Ed. You're listening to the Sapphire Nation podcast number 4. And this month we're going to be talking about building small gaming rigs. There is a movement that began quite a few years ago, but it's really beginning to pick up steam, where people are wanting smaller computers for their gaming rigs. And it's amazing how small you can build a gaming rig today and still be powerful, still have a really good gaming experience. I used to build bigger PCs. I used to be all about the bigger PCs. I'd build big towers and have them sitting on the floors next to me. Then I moved slowly toward mid towers because I wanted leg room. I guess the first ITX direction, the first thing that got me really interested in doing small form factor PCs, you've got to go back to the BitPhoenix Prodigy. That case intrigued me. It intrigued me because it was portable, it was smaller, but yet you were able to build a proper gaming rig in it. And that really got me started. And then I've just continued on from there. I like small form factor builds. I like the fact that there's a lot of reasons to like small form factor builds, but I think before we begin this, let's start with, there's an article I wrote, it's on Sapphire Nation. If you look it up, it's Go Small or Go Home. And I talked about moving into small form factor builds. Now, the article's dated. When you read it, it's going to be dated, but the basic premises apply. There are essentially 3 types of small form factor builds. The first is what I kind of think of is the Ultra ITX. Now, these are little bitty things. Basically, they're designed to work around the APUs. You really don't have room for a graphics card. Many of them have an external power brick. These are super tiny, and many PCs actually fall into this category. They're not builds, they're what you buy. But this category is designed for, like, if you need something at the office to do a spreadsheet, and that's really all you're worried about, or you want to do a PowerPoint presentation, these builds are amazing. Little bitty space, super power efficient and compact. Then you have ITX. Now, when you get to straight ITX, there's an interesting change that's going to take place, because with that really small build, with that APU build, you actually built kind of a budget build. But when you move up into an ITX case, and a lot of these are known for sandwich style cases, you move up into an expensive proposition. Most of the good cases, and these are cases that are under 20 liters, in person I think under 15 liters in total. Most of these cases are $200, $300, $400 just for the case. And then you have to buy the smaller power supplies, and you've got to buy the smaller cooling solutions. You actually end up spending more money, and these are very complicated builds often, because they try to take them over the top. These tend to be a real hardware enthusiast approach to ITX. And then you have the third version. Well, actually, there's 4 now. The third version, which is small ITX cases, stuff like the Lian TU-150, the Cooler Master, SN200 that just came out. I've got a list of other cases. Corsair's got them. Silverstone's got a few. There are these ITX cases that will fit a proper full-powered graphics card to give you a really good gaming experience. Now, many of the boutique ITX cases can as well, but you spend so much money, and these cases are more reasonably priced. And then finally, you have what I call the Maxi ITXs. Maxi ITXs are essentially MATX cases that either are limited to ITX builds or are small enough that it makes sense for ITX. So you need to figure out which of these fits what your goal is, what you're trying to go for. And when it comes to building small form factors, there are a couple of reasons to do it. For me, the build to small form factor was influenced by 2 different reasons. It was, one, I like room. I like space. I find that I put my PC, especially as a small form factor, on the desk, It's not down underfoot. It's not down where the dog can get to it or it collects dust more easily. It's up on the desk. But if I put a bigger build on my desk, I lose desk space. So ITX, by going smaller form factor, I've been able to give myself back my desk space. The other reason is I travel with PCs. If you've followed me on Facebook or Twitter a little bit, you'll see I just recently discussed the fact I just built a purpose-built travel PC using the Lee TU-150. And perfect. It was a perfect travel PC. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. Those are reasons for me. Some people do it for the challenge. I mean, there's all sorts of different reasons, but this is really a growing phenomena. And I thought it would be cool to have an open discussion. Now, I was going to start right off with how we decide parts and stuff, but people have already got questions lining up, so let's get to those. Bohr decided he was going to have the first question. The first question is, what is your favorite form factor and why is it ITX? That's a loaded question. I like ITX because I like efficient. I like things that don't waste space. This is going to come back to another question he asked farther down, where he asked, do you miss the features of the bigger factors like the MATX and the ATX? And I don't. Basically, when I build a gaming rig, what I need out of a gaming rig is I need the ability to use a graphics card. I need decent sound, which many good gaming ITX boards have good onboard sound. And if I don't want to use the onboard sound, I could use a USB amp DAC and actually do better than having an internal sound card. So I don't miss that. They all have built-in networking, and most have really good networking. So I'm not losing that. They've got enough hard drive connections that I'm not losing anything there. The extra expansion slots were just a lot of extra space. Now, in the case of MATX, I don't miss it because MATX boards tend to be the throwaway boards for companies. They put their time and the effort into their ITXs and their ATX boards. That's where you tend to find the good feature sets and the good quality of builds. MATXs tend to be throwaways. So I really don't miss anything by not being MATX. And at ATX, what's the feature set you miss? Oh my God, I've got extra expansion slots. Well, nobody really dual cards anymore. So what's the point? As I pointed out, I don't need a slot for any internal devices other than a graphics card. So really, what do you miss then with an ATX board? You miss maybe a couple of extra SATA ports, or maybe you miss the 2 extra RAM slots. Those aren't things that for most gamers I think are things they will miss. I really find that most gamers can be very happy with an ITX solution. Comp asks, is there something missing from the small PC market? Any parts you want to exist, or just more companies that need to manufacture something? I think there are more companies that need to get involved. I have pushed with SAPPHIRE since the moment I came on with the company for us to be more involved in small form factor. I would like to see motherboard companies become more aggressive with small form factor. They usually produce 1 or 2, but the truth is there are different small form factor needs. Like I said, maybe you're wanting to build a just onboard GPU or an APU system that's just to do PowerPoint and stuff. Maybe you don't need that slot. Imagine a small form factor motherboard where they could remove that PCIe slot and possibly use that space to increase component quality. It becomes very targeted. The same thing with gamer boards. Certain aspects of ITX boards don't necessarily have to be involved for the gamer. I know Gigabyte for a while was doing ITX boards with dual NICs on them. And for a gamer, that's kind of a waste of space. Give me a NIC, give me my wireless solution, and leave me alone. So there needs to be a better effort to focus on what makes the small form factor fit. I'd like to see the same level of attention in motherboards that's given to ATX, where you got 4 or 5, 6 different models depending on your needs. I'd like to see that same attention given to ITX, and I'd like to see, Sapphire included, more GPU companies jumping into the small and being more directly involved in it. I think that would help a lot. Bohr pointed out some people may like expansions like capture cards or special network cards. That's true, but if you want those things, this is what I'm talking about. If you want those things, then buy an MATX or an ATX. If you don't want those things, there's no reason not to go with ITX. And as far as the capture cards are concerned, remember when we had Pixel Twitch on, there is actually a software capture solution available that works, and I've been playing with it. It works as well as a capture card. So you've got options there where you don't necessarily need the internal. Also, there are capture devices available for USB. So small form factor can work. And remember, with a capture device, you're usually not doing one PC. You're doing a gaming PC and then a capture PC. The capture PC could be a completely different build. It may be something that sits on the floor underneath and you never look at. It could be a full tower, and it may not be a big deal. He also asked, since you're talking about efficiency, what do you think about parts getting bigger? I'd like to see the other direction go. I'd like to see a move from bigger to smaller and more efficient, and I think we're going to see that. You've seen this happen with chips quite a bit. You saw everything ramp up, and they'll take a chip design, they'll keep getting more powerful and more powerful. It draws power, and it needs to have it needs to have a bigger cooler. But eventually, a point is reached, a plateau, and for a while, instead of raw power, efficiency becomes the name of the game. Making the chips more efficient, making them draw less power, smaller coolers, smaller in size. And I think we're going to see that eventually happen again. I think we're seeing the ramp up of the new generation, and then we'll see the efficiency mode of the new generation. And there's a point of diminishing return, but the good news is, as I pointed out, with small form factor builds, you've got options. You've got the ability to choose what's going to be the way you want and what's not going to be the way you want, and you can mix and match as you go. Now speaking of that, let's discuss parts for a minute, because the first thing you want to do is pick your case. And picking the case is not as complex as people make it out to be, but it's also not as simple. You need to make on a small gaming PC as to what you want out of the PC. Now, I'm going to focus on two specific cases, and the reason why I'm going to focus on these is they are very similar, but they fit the two diverse styles that I'm going to talk about here, all right? So let's say you want a mobile PC. You want something you can pick up and go. You can take it and go to your in-laws, go to a LAN party, go to whatever. You can just pick it up and go. Mobility becomes very important. And Lian Li with the TU-150, I think, did an amazing job with that. The handle is integrated into the case. It's not flimsy. It's built into the frame of the case. It's very compact, and it does an amazing job to pick up and carry. I absolutely love how easy it is to pick up and carry. And at $100, that's a really nice deal. I remember when Lian Li cases were some of the most expensive you can buy. Now they're reasonably priced. So you get a really high quality case, and I was surprised at how good the cooling is in the case. Great case if you want to have portability. But what if you're just going to leave it sit on your desk? Well, now the portability becomes less of an issue. Cooler Master just introduced, and I'm going to make sure I get the name right. I want to be fair to him about this, and get this name right. It's the NR200. Another case to look at for this as well is the Cougar QBX. These are both good small form factor cases, but they don't have a handle. They don't have an easy way to pick up. Now, because they're so small, I get people that'll say to me, and by the way, I see Josh Sniffen just snuck in here. Josh, you should have voice capability if you want to use it.
Too.
There you go. Um, there's a lot of here. Hold on a second, Josh. I'm going to raise your volume a little. I asked Josh to stop in because Josh is a small form factor
Whoa.
snob.
Did you say snot in?
Yeah, because I was about to say snob.
Oh.
You're a bit of a small form factor snob.
Well, that's true.
And so what I'm trying to discuss here with everyone, but I want your other take of the perspective of this, is these everyday cases, these $100 cases from Lee and Lee and from Cooler Master and from Cougar that can give you a good small form factor build, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. Now, true, you're not getting as small as some of the others, but I think these give a good starting point to people that want to get into smaller builds. And so anyway, the point I was making was the Lee and Lee is very good if you need portability, but if you don't need portability, the Cooler Master and the Cougar might even be better options. They're smaller. And so you've got to first make your decision as to why you want small form factor, I think. If you want portability, you want to look for something that is easy for you to travel around with. And if you're not looking at it, then you can dismiss that feature and look at the other options more easily. Josh, I'd love to hear your thought on that.
Oh, I think that's fair. I kind of get a little bit ruffled, though, when I see cases by bigger manufacturers that are just clones of the chassis that were not only designed, but the market was created by indie users. And that kind of just rubs me the wrong way a little bit.
I understand where you're coming from, because the three cases I mentioned are pretty much based on in-case.
Yeah, especially the new Cooler Master, which, to be fair, is a great case. It's really well thought out. It's translated nicely into a low-cost design, and the price is right there. It's a case that I could see me purchasing for people, but I'm not going to because I don't really like that. I mean, I don't know what. Maybe they've talked to in-case or whatever, but... You
see, now I think that's something that we need to... And I've got a contact at Cooler Master. I might check with him and see. Well, first, you've got a problem. There's only so many ways you can build a small form factor case.
But every time someone says that, someone comes up with a brand new design.
Well,
so I just think that's a really big excuse for big companies.
I don't know. What else can you do besides either the in-case approach or the sandwich case approach? What's left? For a proper case is what I'm talking about. I mean, you've got the one that was done by NZXT, their tower case. But at that point, what's left? How much smaller can you go? How much more can you change the case design and still fit conventional parts?
I think it always can be done. It's going to get less and less efficient. I think that there's major layout breakthroughs for sure, and in-case is one of them. But even if we put that argument aside, which I not willing to, but just to stay on topic, I think that the Cooler Master case is really close to the in-case.
It is, and so's the Lee and Lee. So's the Lee and Lee.
The air orientation, the mounting brackets.
In fact, the QBX is pretty close as well.
Yes. The Lee and Lee's a little bit more of a departure, which is nice, but it's also a little bit scary because Lee and Lee at one point also manufactured the in-case.
Well, at some point, like I said, at some point there's only so far you can go with the design. I'm happy to see, though, that these designs, which up until recently have really only been available for $200, $300, $400, are suddenly becoming available at $100 or less.
Yeah, because they're not the ones that developed the market. They're not the ones that did the design, and they just lifted it right up.
That wasn't what I meant. What I meant was this opens the market to a whole new group of users that wouldn't have jumped into this market yet.
Yeah, but I think that it'd be polite if they actually worked with the indie guys.
I absolutely think it would be polite if they worked with the guys. I think that maybe come back to in-case. If you've got an obvious copy of an in-case design, you come back to in-case and you say, you know what, we're going to give you a certain percentage, a small percentage, but a certain percentage of the profits for the first 1,000,000 cases sold or something. Something designing this and creating this market. I don't disagree. I think that that's not a terrible idea. So when you've got your case selection made, we're going to continue forward. You got your case selection made, and now the next step is you got to pick your parts. And while the crowd Josh runs with tends to go for higher end stuff, 3950s, seriously, 3950s, okay.
3970 exited too this week.
And you got that, and they overclock and they water cool. For most gamers, that level isn't necessary. I think there's a couple of keys here. And the key I'm going to give you is actually from my friend Ed Caldwell, who works for AMD. Ed's the one that got me really interested in some of this stuff. And it's all about finding a way to achieve the power level you want without spending more power in your system than you need. So I think
you know what, Ed? This is what I believe too. So I'm right there with him. My customer's not necessily.
I understand.
I call it just enough gaming. That's what I like.
So with AMD Solutions, 3600 to me is a great chip. It's a wonderful chip for what you want for gaming. It's more than enough horsepower to have a great gaming experience. It's a low power unit that can actually, in BIOS, people forget about this, be made lower powered. So it's currently, as AMD measures it, a 65 TDP chip. But there is an eco mode in the BIOS where you can turn that down to 45. And
is that just a switch on most motherboards? There's no undervolting involved?
It's basically what it is it changes the power delivery system so that where before it was taking all the power levels up to what a 65 watt chip would be, they're now reduced to what a 45 watt chip would be. Or if you've got 105 TDP or a 95 TDP chip, it takes it down to 65. So it's a really neat feature if you want to take a slightly higher core count, but you're having trouble with the heat. It's a really neat feature to maybe help a little bit. You're going to lose performance. You're obviously going to lose performance, but this becomes really relative because a 3600 is easily able to perform in any gaming, and losing even a little bit of performance isn't going to hurt your gaming experience. But the other side of this that you want to do is you take these low wattage chips. Now you want to find a way to cool it that's overkill. And what I mean by that is we're going to use TDPs, though we know that this isn't an accurate measurement, but I think it gives an idea of what I'm talking about. If you've got a 65 TDP chip, you want a 120 TDP cooler or better.
Why is that?
Because the fans don't have to spin up. They stay quiet. The cooler has more than enough oomph in it to handle the heat. And so you don't have to spin the fans up. Because your small form factor PC is going to usually be sitting closer to you than a big PC is. And it doesn't have necessarily all the airflow within it of a bigger case. So you got to find a way to make that cooling as efficient as you can make it. You want to make it work the way it should. You want to make that cooling really efficient. And again, with these slightly bigger cases, I think we're seeing some really nice options. The Cooler Master and the Lian Li and the Cougar will actually be decent sized tower coolers if you wanted to go that far. I'm not a big fan of tower coolers for a couple of reasons. One, I hate transporting them. Think a lever and then put a lot of weight at the end of a lever. You're going to have, unless you're laying that computer on its side for transport, you're going to have this weight that's going to be bouncing. And yeah, they're supposed to be designed to handle it, but it doesn't mean I like it. I'm not a big fan of that. That's why I prefer top-down coolers or blow-down coolers. Josh got me turned on to the Scythe Big Shuriken 3.
I love that cooler.
That's a great cooler if you've got the room for it. Especially if you throw on a better fan. We'll get to that in a minute. So that's a great cooler. Now I know you use a lot of the super small Noctuas.
Yep.
For your
NHL
builds.
NHL 9 and NHL 9A are my favorite.
But Noctua actually has a bigger one that competes with the Scythe. I can't think of what it is now. Something 12S. Oh, I can't think of what the cooler is. You know the one I'm talking about, Josh. I know you do.
Yeah, I do.
The L12S, the NHL 12S. Thank you, Bor. That's a great cooler for doing this. And in sandwich cases, this is the one thing I love about sandwich cases. Sandwich cases are often basically open air. I know your case, Josh, your custom case is essentially an open air case.
Yeah.
Because everything's grilled. So you've got these coolers going right up against, not touching, but really close to the side of the case. And that case is open. It's got a lot of airflow capable through those side panels. The result is these are pulling nothing but fresh, cool air. It's amazing how cool these small cases can run because of this open design. Now, in the situations presented with the TU1 NR200, what you've got instead is you've got decent airflow positioning. Now, I haven't got an NR200 yet, so I'm not going to speak to its cooling yet. I haven't tested it. But I put the TU150 through its paces. I've got an intake fan, an exhaust fan, and then I put a regular 120 on the Scythe cooler. And I was running an first generation Ryzen 1700. I could not take it above 60C under load. I couldn't get above 60C under load. And it was quiet because the airflow was good. As for the GPU in those case designs, the fans point down, the bottom of the case is open. And you get good airflow into the GPU. So you've got some pretty good options there for airflow. Now, I get people ask me, why do you prefer a top-down cooler other than the leverage and the force? I know you don't necessarily always need it, but I like to run air over VRMs.
Yeah, I think it's important, and for RAM as well, and super small form factor cases. In tower cases, I don't think there's a point because you're going to get enough crossflow, but for like my size case and everything, it's kind of important.
Well,
the CPU cooler is cooling everything. It's not just cooling the CPU.
Now
that's it.
I had somebody ask me once, well, what about AIOs? Now, Josh and I are neither one big fans of AIOs. If you have to use an AIO, though, in a small form factor build like this, I actually like the stuff from Enttec because it's got that little fan that's blowing air over the VRMs. And again, it's not a lot, but it doesn't have to be a lot. A little bit of air helps. And the reason we need to focus so much on that airflow is really basic thermodynamics. And there's a really simple way to explain this for people to get why it's more important in a smaller case. So you go and you get boiling water. You make that water as hot as you can get it. Now, you get a small pot of room temperature water, and you take a cup of boiling water and you put it in the pot of room temperature. You just pour it in. And the temperature of the pot you pour it into rises. Okay, the reason it doesn't rise all the way to boiling is dissipation. That heat becomes balanced out across all the water thermal surface that's got available to it. Okay, now you take that same cup of boiling water and you pour it in a bucket of tepid water. And the bucket's temperature doesn't rise as far because it's got a larger thermal mass to spread out that temperature on. That's what's happening with ITX cases. When the heat comes off your components, you've got internally a much smaller thermal mass to dissipate the heat in the air inside the case. When you move to a mid tower or a full tower, you've got a massive thermal mass to dissipate the heat. So when you build small form factor, airflow becomes massively important. You've got to really pay attention to that airflow. You want to make it move in the right directions. You want to make sure you're getting good cool air coming into the case. And in this reasoning, I think that when building ITX or small form factor computers, fan choice is 100 times more important than it is in other cases. Now, fans, we like to get caught up in fans about how they move air, about how much air they're moving, and that's important. That's an important feature. But again, remember, with a small form factor case, this is sitting next to you on a desk. You want it to be quiet. And with that in mind, Josh, I know you've done a lot of this. Is there anything keeping up with Noctua right now?
It's kind of hard to say. I have a cooler spreadsheet I can put in the Discord for you. There are coolers that beat it, but they're kind of buy them in Korea or whatever, and then the fans are terrible, so you need to buy a Noctua fan to put on them.
Well, that's more of my concern here. If you're getting case fans, is anybody keeping up with Noctua?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, that A1225, I know it's expensive, but good God, it's amazing how good of a fan it is.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how good of a fan it was. Now, I've looked at others. Bohr, I will grant you, I like Be Quiet fans. I do.
Be Quiet does make good stuff, yeah. And the EK Vardar and the Fractal Design Venturi fans, those are all very high quality, but it comes down to...
The Vardar, and even, I mean, for pure quality, the Corsair MLs are great fans. They're really well-made fans. What I found with the Vardar and the ML is they both had more motor noise than other fans I looked at, which is really odd. I wouldn't have thought that magnetic levitation would have had more motor noise, but it did. The Vardars tended to be a little louder than the Noctuas. But again, it's going to be, mileage is going to vary. It's going to be what you can afford in your budget. But when you're building for that small form factor gaming PC, because it's going to sit closer, you're going to want to make sure you're taking into account not just airflow, but noise level. You've got to find the balance. This is something that when I did this build this last week, well, actually, it's been a couple of weeks ago now, Josh got me started on open air builds. You all know that. I love a good open air build. This was the first time in a while, other than my big demo rig, which is a couple of years old, this is the first time in a while I've had to really build inside a case, because for traveling, you want the case to protect the PC. I had to fine-tune fans. I haven't had to do that in forever. I had to tune in fan control to be able to keep the noise level under control, but to keep the temperature under control at the same time. It's not a new experience for me. It's just one I haven't had to do for a long time. So that's an important consideration. So you want to get a low power chip that's got enough horsepower to do what you want to do. You want to get a cooler that overkill that fits in your case. So again, it's going to run cool. It's going to run quiet. You want to make sure you got the best quality fans you can put on the case. Next up comes the motherboard. At
least for the CPU, because it can get darn expensive outfitting your case with high quality Noctuas.
Well, I'm going to be replacing all four fans, because there's actually a fourth fan in my Lian Li. There's a slim 120 on the bottom that I've got running at really low speeds feeding up. I'm going to be replacing all four fans with Noctuas, and it's going to run me a little over $100 to replace all four. So yeah, you spend money if you want to go with Noctua.
Yeah, you won't buy an NFC case, but you'll trick out your case with fans. I see how it is.
Well, but you see, the NFC, even then, well, your NFC case is a beautiful case. Do you have a handle?
I am working on one.
Okay, because the biggest complaint I've got with most of these really good small form factor cases, I'd love to have an in case. Okay, or what was the other one? The Ghost. I'd love to have one of these really nice small form factor cases. They don't have handles. And the only one I found, you told me don't buy.
Of course, you have one of my S3 minis. It's so small you don't even really need a handle.
Well, you don't, because I also got it with a briefcase. So he's not wrong. The S3 mini, it's the S4 now.
Yeah, it's S4.
The S4 is small enough as well, but I like having the handle. It makes it easier to carry the case around. And one of my big complaints with most of these others is there's no place to put a handle, because you've got to have a handle. A handle's got to be able to carry some weight, because even an S4, a fully built S4 brickless, weighs in about 8 pounds, 9 pounds.
It's 6.5.
6.5. Oh, a TU-150 or the Corsair NR200. Well, we'll use the TU-150. It's all aluminum construction. It's actually a fairly lightweight case. But by the time you add power supply and everything else, it's up to 10 pounds. And if you just attach a handle to the top, most of the top sheets on pretty much any case design is just thin metal.
Yeah.
So you're going to attach a handle. That's what I love about what they did with the TU-150. They built that handle into the frame of the case, into the structure, and this thing's actually rated for something like 25 kilograms, which is insane. It's insane how much it's rated for, but it's built like a tank. I love features like that get outside we tend to get wrapped up in the technology, and that we get outside and we don't see the quality of life improvements.
Oh man, you're just speaking my language right now.
Well, I remember Enttec 900 when it came out, which I get people ask me, what's your favorite case of all time? Crap, Josh is in the room. Okay, what's your favorite case of all time? It's the Enttec 900. I believe it changed the way cases were looked at quite a bit. But what I really loved about the case was two quality of life features that most people don't even think about anymore. First, there was a tray on the top. So if you need to put a flash drive or, well, now a cell phone charger or something, you had this nice, easily positioned tray to stick this stuff on. The second thing, and the one that everybody overlooked, is the front panel I/O was at the top of the case, and they cantered it 33 degrees.
Makes it easy to see.
It was easy to see. It was easy to plug into. I have no other case have I ever used that I could plug in a USB device on the first try. It always takes one or two tries to get the device in, because you're either coming down at a right angle to you, perpendicular to you, or parallel to you, where it's hard to see. And that little canter, that stupid little canter, was like godlike. It was like, holy...
You know what's crazy, though? I just learned this after how many years of USB? You always plug it in with the USB logo facing up.
Yes.
It's standardized, apparently.
Well, it's supposed to be. I wish more things were standardized. It'd be really nice.
I had no idea, though, so... Up and side down and backwards for me.
Okay, so Nits pointed out that PC Cool fans have a good 5-pack, an RGB 5-pack. So does Arctic. Arctic's got a non-RGB 5-pack. That's a really good value. And Arctic now has, many of their fans have the ability to daisy chain. I know for most people that may not be a big deal, but for me that's amazing. So instead of having to run the cables from the fans all down to another location, so on and so forth, you can plug fan into fan into fan and then have a single connection for the fan's power.
I do like that.
I like that.
All-in-ones have that built in too.
They've got that, and is it Lian Lee that did it where the fans clip together?
I don't know.
Somebody did one where the fans actually click together.
That's genius.
And do it. It's brilliant for people that want 360s or 280s. It's just a wonderful feature set. Bohr commented, the 3600 is the default choice. 3300X, I got no complaints with the 3300X other than the fact you can't find it. can't find the damn thing anywhere. But usually, or I would say go a step further. Now remember, I just built, because I had the parts laying around, I built on a 1700. It did an amazing job at gaming. I can't tell any difference unless I did benchmarks. I could not tell any difference between the gameplay experience on my 3800X and the 1700.
Do you want to hear some hard truths?
Well, always.
I have a 2400G in my system right now, my PC, and I can't tell the difference between that and any of my customer builds with the same graphics card.
There you go.
The 3970X, a 2400G.
I'm not going to argue that. I believe that's very possible. We put sometimes on raw horsepower that we forget there's an elegance of going the other way. I use the example of this. The Ford Mustang is an amazing car. It's the very definition of the American muscle car. Big, beefy, powerful. Just you put your foot in it, it roars down the road. Have you ever driven a Lotus Esprit, Joshua?
I have not.
A Lotus Esprit, in a raw horsepower perspective, doesn't win at all. But everything is so tight and so efficient that it is a pure joy to drive. It's an amazing experience. It's a completely different experience, but it's the same thing I think often with PC building. We tend to get in this raw horsepower mentality, and that's the cool thing about small builds. You don't need raw horsepower. You need efficient design. And you've got those options available to you.
Okay, where do I write the check for the advertising?
We'll talk later. I'll give you my PayPal. But it's so you do efficient design. All right, so selecting a motherboard. Selecting a motherboard, as we discussed earlier, with ITX sucks because the same attention to detail in ATX isn't given to ITX. You don't have the options. You don't have an ability to have an ITX motherboard that's designed for just APUs. You don't have an ITX motherboard that's designed for a work solution approach or just gaming approach. You don't have that selection. So it's kind of an all sizes or all boards fit deal. You know what I mean?
Kind of like the mini ITX motherboards, I see they're either extremely high end and they have everything in the kitchen sink.
Thank you, Nitz.
Or they're pretty bare bones.
Did you see ASRock did this? Nobody else has done this yet that I saw. They actually released 2 B550 motherboards.
Yeah, and I thought that was really strange. I've been buying both of them to see what I can realistically see the difference of.
One of them is very bare bones. It has just a crap sound solution. From what I can tell, it does not have dual NVMe.
Right.
It's got a much simpler design. It turned off a lot of the more advanced features. The other one, but it sells for like $120. Okay.
Well, you can find it, yeah.
Yeah, if you can find it. The other one is more high end, and it sells for like $179. And it added a second NVMe, which I think I like that solution. I like having the 2 NVMe. It added a much better sound solution for onboard. And so you've got a little bit of choice. When I look for an ITX motherboard, I know that there are so many people that have gotten their heads wrapped around VRMs. They think the VRM on a motherboard determines if a motherboard's good or not. And while a crappy VRM solution is not good, I don't know that I've ever seen a motherboard with a truly crappy VRM solution if you weren't trying to overclock. Most of them are more than adequate if you're not trying to overclock. So instead of focusing on the VRMs, I tend to focus on the feature set. Like I said, I like good onboard sound. And with a travel rig, that's important. You're going to use the onboard sound. So you want good onboard sound. Exactly, Boar. With the 3600 in stock, seriously. If you can fry the VRM, that is the definition of a shitty motherboard. if you can fry the VRM with a 3600 in stock. I want a good onboard sound. I want a good NIC and Wi-Fi. Because, again, these are features I'm going to use every day.
Yeah, and this is a problem, I think, with, and don't hate me, but AMD motherboards, mini Enttec motherboards. It's harder to find the right one on the AMD side than it is Intel. Which is why a lot of my customers end up going Intel, even though AMD has, I think, the superior chips at this performance.
Well, I think the problem is twofold. First, availability.
Yeah, well, it's a problem.
This stuff, it is. It's a definite problem. And that has to do with the fact that the AMD chips are selling better. The boards are selling out faster. As far as actual quality of motherboards, there are very few ITX boards I'm seeing without good onboard sound, without an amp, without a decent solution. Now, the other thing I look for, and this is why I've steered away from ASRock, and I've gone to Gigabyte or Asus until the new generation, which has begun to change. I like having that NVMe drive on top of the motherboard. Not every case has the cutout big enough to get to the drive. So if you've got that drive on top of the motherboard, it's easier if you need to swap it.
Except if you have an S4 Mini where you can just remove 4 screws to the back panel.
Well, absolutely.
There you go.
Buy the S4 Mini. There you go. A little advertising for NFC Systems. I like having that way. Now, speaking of that, we get to storage. Almost all of these cases we're discussing will obviously fit standard SSDs. That's pretty much a given. We have reached the point, though, the price point, where I really just don't see the need for, in a small gaming rig, to use anything that's not M.2. I mean, if you need to save some money, you buy a SATA M.2. If you don't need to save some money, then you buy the NVMe drive.
It's crazy, too, because I've been looking for a super low-cost solution for a large system integrator or a system integration project, and the NVMe drives are expensive now than the SATA M.2 drives.
They're getting close. They're getting close. I saw your live stream, by the way, and saw that you had moved to I can't think of the name of the brand.
Drives.
Yep. Another brand, if you haven't tried it, is Inland.
Yeah, I did. I bought one after you recommended it from what's that?
You're going to tell me you had a bad experience, aren't you?
No, I didn't. I didn't have a bad experience. No.
See, I use Inland Professionals for all my drives. And I've had nothing but good experience with them. Though Sabrent has competed with them on price. This is good to see. There's competition. 1 terabyte drives at around 120 or less. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So that's going to get you your storage. RAM is RAM. I hate to be that blunt about it.
Yeah, RAM is RAM. It's going to be hard for manufacturers to differentiate.
If you're building a gaming rig, which is what we're talking about here, 16 gig is plenty. Anything beyond 16 gig, you're really, except, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the Microsoft Flight specs, the requirements for the PC?
No, but I could see that actually using a lot of RAM.
At recommended, the suggested, the top end suggested they want 32 gig. That is a crap load of level loading.
Yeah, right into your computer system.
Yeah.
COVID made a futile... It's like, what if I go back in time and then show people Google Maps? So I'd have to have it on my phone because it wouldn't be streamed to me. How big is Google Maps? Oh, it's 200 quintibytes or something.
Yeah, you ain't taking that back.
No.
Okay, so we got the storage. By the way, storage size is going to depend on your needs.
512 at least, though.
512, I think, is a bare minimum for a gaming rig. It gives you a good selection of games. It gives you your Windows install and still some room left over. My travel rig has a 512, and I've got about 200 gig left after I put everything on I wanted.
Yeah, I'd
So
say on Linux or Mac OS you can get away with 256, but on Windows,
yeah, but even with Linux or Mac, even with Linux, I think I would still go with 512 because of the price. 512s aren't that expensive.
no.
If you're a more hardcore gamer or you've got a touch of a hoarder mentality, the good news is terabyte drives are not that expensive.
And something else I'll add about this too is that you do not need the faster NVMe drives. I mean, I can't even tell a difference in color grading or exporting or anything like that.
No,
If you're like running a server, okay, yeah, maybe. But for gaming, just go with the cheapest option.
there's three different models of NVMe. There is PCIe 4, that's what everybody's talking about. There's PCIe 3x4, which are those drives you're seeing that are around 3 megabits per second. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there's PCIe 3x2, which is around half the speed of the PCIe 3x4. That's still 3 times the speed of a SATA drive.
Yeah.
Any of those will fit the bill.
SATA drives are super fast. There's no reason to buy one. I wouldn't recommend it. But
Well, no, I wouldn't
gaming.
at this point. I wouldn't at this point buy one with the pricing. There's no advantage.
Yeah.
So okay, let's see what we got here real quick. We got a couple of things. RAM can depend upon the CPU cooler, unless you get the Scythe. Yeah, no. In fairness, you're not wrong. Try to avoid. To be honest, there's no real reason to get crazy unless you're going to window the case. So try to avoid big RAM coolers. Stay with the small, clean stuff like Crucial and HyperX do, and even G-Skill to some extent do. This lets it fit pretty much anything. And there are enough cooler options. You should be okay. Let's see here. 200 plus gig, minimum at least a terabyte of hard drive storage, or get at least and again, Jens, that's what we're 12 gig on the SSD is probably the sweet spot. 1 terabyte's great. Anything smaller than that, don't waste your time. You're just throwing good money after bad, unless you're trying to.
RAM speeds and latencies, and if it matters for gamers.
Well, I've had this discussion with a few people. We're probably going to run long, by the way, guys. I hope everybody hangs on, and I hope the YouTube community will not hang up too quick when they watch this later. My experience, I've actually done testing with 3000, 3200, and 3600 RAM. And what I have found is if you throw away the benchmark, if you don't look at the benchmark, you can't tell the difference. So I suggest 3200. And the reason I suggest that is pricing and availability. A good 3200 RAM kit is fine, especially for the 3600. The faster RAM, 3600 and up speeds, that becomes a bigger deal, I think, if you're carrying much heavier workloads. I could see how that could become more important with really heavy workloads. But for gamers, unless you're watching benchmarks all the time, you can't tell the difference, guys.
There's only one exception, and that's with APUs. And as somebody who's bought a lot of APU systems, you can't buy fast enough RAM.
I am waiting for the day that AMD does something that I think would be amazing, but I'm not sure how it would handle in marketing because it's going to really throw the pricing off. And that is the day you get an APU with 16 gig of HBM on it.
Ooh.
It would be a freaking beast of a chip. Because you don't have to buy RAM at that point. You could build a motherboard without RAM.
Yeah.
And the RAM throughput would be faster than the chip could keep up with. It would be nothing short of amazing. It would be essentially, truly a computer on a chip.
For them deciding to release I know this doesn't make sense to them, but like a high-end APU for professionals that want a small box.
Yes, I think that would be an amazing. Well, especially now, they're bringing out a 6-core. Aren't they bringing out a 6-core APU?
Like that.
Yeah, you build an 8-core 16-thread APU and you stick HBM on it.
Yeah, we're all really excited about it.
I think
an issue, but
that would just be amazing. It would be an amazing chip for people that want to do rendering, or other work where they don't really need the GPU. They just need the CPU horsepower. Give them that CPU horsepower with essentially, from a CPU perspective, unlimited bandwidth to the memory.
Yeah, with just decent graphics, just to drive 4K monitor and 3D applications, stuff like that. That's like I said, that's my main system. I have that 2400G, and I don't run it with a card half the time, and I'm doing Fusion 360, and I play the Blizzard games and all that, and I enjoy it just fine. So I wish it was a little bit more powerful, but I think the 4200 is going to fix that problem for me.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is GPUs. Josh is going to behave himself.
Only Sapphire products. Everything else is garbage.
Thank you, Josh. So the good news is most of these everyday small form factor cases we're talking about will fit pretty much anything. I have fit a Nitro Plus 5700 XT in the TU150. It fits fine. And so these cases, by being a little bigger, by being closer to that 20 liter, they're giving you a lot more options when it comes to choosing your GPU. Of the Sapphire lineup, I'm a really big fan of the Pulse series for this. Excuse me, they're a little smaller. And when you're talking about a travel rig, there's an aspect of the travel rig. We won't get into too much detail here, but the aspect of the travel rig that's a real pain in the ass is the monitor. And you tend to want to have smaller monitors because they're easier to travel with. So 24 inch is really common for a travel PC, which means 1080p. In that case, the 5600 XT BE is near perfect for a travel rig. It all the horsepower you're going to need for 1080p gaming is small enough that there aren't many cases it won't fit in, unless you get to the itty bitty things. So you've got good options there for the GPU. Then comes the last part, and this is the biggest pain in the ass part, especially right now to get. That's the power supply. So most of these small builds require SFX or SFXL power supplies. These are significantly smaller than an ATX. They usually come fully modular. They usually come highly efficient. It's not uncommon to see gold and platinum on these, and you pay for it. In normal retail, a 650 watt SFX power supply at a gold rating is about $140. And when you get past that, the prices just keep going up.
But the good news is, with the build you've been talking about today, you don't need anywhere near 600.
No, a 550 to a 600 would be about all you need. A 650 at the most.
Is there a way to post some benchmarks in this channel right here? Power supply stuff?
Up in the listener questions, can you post there?
Yeah, let's see about that. I'm doing benchmarks right now with a lower powered build, and you can see the actual wattage draw of these systems.
There you go.
And for especially like your pulse cards that I've been using, like even your latest one, the 5600. With the CPU, you're looking at an average of 210 watts.
Yeah, and you see, that's another advantage to the smaller builds people don't realize. I forgot what the number is, but there was an actual measurable power loss or drop from to an ITX.
That's interesting. I wouldn't know that because I only buy ITX.
Yeah, there's actually a power loss drop. Now, it's not massive. I think it's something like 5 watts. But 5 watts is 5 watts, dude.
Yeah.
And
it all adds up.
It all adds up. It all becomes a factor in the end. But I'm hoping we've given you, and when it comes to the small form factor power supplies, I try to avoid this other than Sapphire, obviously, because I get paid to say Sapphire. Actually, no, I like Sapphire products. That's genuine, and that was way before I ever worked for the company. When it comes to
a good brand,
when it comes to small form factor power supplies, I deviate from my norm. I really like Silverstone.
Yes.
And I like Silverstone not just because they were one of the first to do it, and they make a good product, but they offer a feature on their power supplies that nobody else offers, and I want to know why the hell not. Their power supplies, SFX and full size, by the way, all the modular cabling is 100% compatible. So you can buy, when you buy a Silverstone small form factor power supply, you end up getting a short cabling set. Some of these builds with these cases I'm talking about, and I've seen this with the Lee and Lee, some of the cabling needs to be a little longer. You can buy a long cabling set from them, and you don't have to run extension cords. So
I would say, to be fair, other vendors do that. However, Silverstone is by far the best because they have the best pinout. So they're being adopted by other brands.
Well,
and there's tons of different companies out there that make cable sets you could order.
But they do that with everything? Because you see, I could take that short cable set and I could use it on a full size. I could use it on any of their full size modular. That to me is amazing. The pure standardization of the cable set.
Yes.
Is amazing.
When the Silverstone ecosystem, you can swap the cables out from, I think, any power supply that they've ever done.
But what I really like about that SFX is when you introduce an extension, you introduce a point of failure in your power system. A point that can come unplugged, a point that can short. You've just got a point of failure. But by the ability for me to be able to buy the extra set, which, by the way, doesn't cost much more than buying a set of cable extensions, by buying that extra set of cables, I now have the ability to plug in directly to anything I want. And it's less expensive, by the way, than buying a custom cable set. I love that. I adore that system. I just think that system is amazing, and for small form factor, they're really hard to beat thanks to that. So there we go. We've just covered most of the basics of building a small gaming rig. There's a whole lot of other stuff. There's stuff to talk about with peripheral choices and monitor choices and features to look for these for travel rigs. But I think that's another show. I'm glad Josh got to stop by and hang out for a little bit.
Well, thanks for inviting me, man.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome anytime, man. Just wondering why men's aren't standardizing. Okay, so the reason... Well, I know the reasoning, and I think the reasoning is stupid, Jens. I think that all the cabling should be standardized. I would like to see power supply vendors build power supplies, and then the cablings are anything you want. I would love to see a standardization on that. You're never going to see it. It's just not going to happen because that's the way they keep you within their product group. And that's just marketing. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just what it is.
But kudos to the manufacturers that are adopting Silverstone as a standard.
Well, if they're adopting Silverstone as a standard, that's often awesome. Also, kudos to a manufacturer that will take its entire line and just standardize within its line.
Yeah.
I can accept that because...
Who's done that, though?
Other than Silverstone, I don't know that anybody's done it yet, have they?
No, especially not actually gone back and redone it.
I'm
glad that Corsair actually has a standard now. That's great because they didn't used to.
Yeah, the standard comes in handy because think about it. You grab that bag of extra cables and you toss it in the closet. And you do 2 or 3 PC builds, and the time comes that you need to grab an extra cable. Maybe you're going to put a new hard drive in, you didn't have a cable before or something. And you go back, and I've done this, by the way, and you go back and you grab the bag and you look at it and you think you've got the right one for the right power supply. and then you plug it in and watch your SSD catch on fire.
that
That happened.
literally happened yesterday in my channel.
Oh.
Some poor guy plugged in his wrong SATA cable connector into the power supply, thinking it was a standard. And
so here's a quick tip for all of you. Most of the and if they don't have it, I'm get a big Ziploc bag. Most of the modular cable power supplies have this little bag to hold the extra cables in. So what you do is cut off the name of the power supply and the wattage off the side of the box and stick that piece of cardboard in the bag. That way you always know you've got the right cable. And while Jen's approach is good, boxes take up too much space. The smaller bags are way more useful for that.
What about a box of smaller bags?
I've got a box full of those smaller bags right now. I've got about 10 different power supply bags
that will never open up and use.
Where I take care of people. No, I'll probably never use them. Well, think about it. I haven't, with the exception of if I need it for a large-scale fan controller, and with the builds I'm doing now, I won't. I'll never use a SATA or a Molex connector again.
You're a good man, though.
So you've got the fact that you won't have those. It depends. If I've got to put quite a few fans on for some reason, then I'll have to pull a SATA connector out because I get my splitters with SATA connectors. But other than that, what am I going to do? There's just no need. So there we go. All right. Any questions on small form factor gaming builds? We'll give it a few more minutes and we've run over, but you know what? That just means we had fun. I'm trying to see here what else we got up here. Remember back in the day this is from Nits, buying a 1,000-watt power supply to run Crossfire SLI. Funny you say that. In my test bench in front of me right now is a 1,200-watt power supply. And it is.
Yeah.
And the reason I bought it, and by the way, when I got it, it was a refurb. The reason I bought it was I had thought about getting into mining, and I wanted to get a big enough power supply to do all of that. So I never did. I never got into mining, thank God. And when I went to build my test bench, that power supply was just sitting on the shelf, and I'm like, well, hell, I'll use it here. Boar, at no point, as much as I would like to, can I comment on the potential of a future product. I can't do that. That the 5500 XT BE or 5600 XT BE is not quite to small form factor, but for everything we've discussed here and for many of the better sandwich style cases, it will fit just fine.
And if you will actually send me another one of them, I could modify it to fit in the mini, and I really want to.
I thought you and Philip worked that out.
I contacted him, but I think that he was nervous I wasn't going to get it done. But I'll get it done.
Well, send him another note.
Done tomorrow.
Send him a note.
I have a chop saw.
Josh will tell you, I have always pushed for small form factor builds. In fact, go back to the 280 ITX that SAPPHIRE introduced. Up until that point, they had never done an ITX card, not a true ITX card. And that card came about because of some discussions I had at LAN OC's LAN party. And I came back and started pushing real hard for an ITX card. I pushed real hard for it. And we've had a few since then. I continue to push. And Josh will tell you, I continue to push. One of the things I would like to see done is I'd like to see companies, and I know some others have done this, Josh, so we don't need to mention them. I would like to see, I would like to see two different versions of this, because the ITX card, like the Fury Nano, That's a neat little card. But to me, the neater cards are the small form factor cards. These are typically, they can be dual fan. Was it 220 millimeters in length?
Yeah, total length with the connector, so 215.
A hair above normal height, and maybe 2.25 slot. Those to me are amazing because they can fit in practically anything, and you still get that advanced cooling option. The Nano was a great card. The Fury Nano was a great card, but it was a loud card relative to all the other Fury cards that were produced.
And the sad thing about it is, I think that this is the point where we have the technology where it makes sense. Like, that was kind of like pushing the envelope, but now it makes sense. Like, a 5700 in that form factor would be perfect.
I think a 5700 could be done. Again, I'm not an engineer. I don't have the ability to try different coolers and fan solutions in front of me. I can just try what's built and play with it and see what it does. I would love to see, though, the time put in to see if it could be done and if it could have it implemented. I think it would be a great product idea. And a lot of people at Sapphire agree with that. I'm not sure. Again, I can't comment on this because I don't have the background information. And, well, obviously NDAs and everything else as well, because we won't comment on a product that's being designed or not being designed, and it might be coming or might not be coming, or you just can't do that. I saw a discussion in a Facebook group today, and I commented on this. There was a bunch of talk about the new NVIDIA card and the new Navi, the new high-end Navi stuff. And they were talking about numbers and performance and power draws and everything else. And I told them, I said, you guys just need to shut up. The hype train will run you over. It doesn't care. It will run you over. We all want to see new products. We all want to get excited about new products. But until the product is in the reviewer's hands and on the shelves, it doesn't exist. Don't get caught up in the hype train. People save money and prepare and then go out and blow ridiculous amounts of money, and don't get caught up in the hype train, guys. We got plenty of good parts right now to make amazing gaming builds. The future might be better. Right now, things are awesome. You can do some great stuff. All right, any other questions? Because we're going to get out of here. So Josh can go do stuff and I can go eat lunch. I'm starving. Give you guys a few seconds here, and then we're going to pack this in. Again, thank you to Josh Sniffen from NFC Systems for taking the time. Josh, would you post a link in the listener questions to your website? So if they want to come find out more about your case designs, because Josh actually makes small form factor gaming cases. He makes the kind of console design gaming cases. But there's that. And speaking of which, Josh, if you ever talk to your idol there, Optimus, in the TU-150 video, he talked about his case feet design that he suggested to use with the TU-150, and his link is broke. I want the STLs. I'm going to print new feet. I think I actually found some. I found some in-case feet design. That, by the way, I don't know if you saw this. Got to give Cooler Master kudos for this. I haven't even tried the case yet, and I'm excited about this. They released it in 2 models. I don't know if you saw this. You get one model that's just the bare bones base. The second model, you not only have the metal side panel, but they give you the glass side panel so that you can decide which way you want to do this. I talked to Lee. The actual case frame on the non-windowed to the windowed is different because of the thickness of the window. So you can't just buy a solid frame on a windowed and replace it.
Ooh.
So that was kind of bad. But the other thing they did, they released the STLs for the feet for the NR200, with 4 or 5 different designs. So you could pick how you want your feet to look. That's just cool.
Yeah, the 3D printed ones from the Cooler Master.
Yeah, that's just totally cool that they did that. And remember, guys, this is how you know that this form factor is becoming mainstream. 2 of the top case manufacturers in the world have gotten serious about their cases for it. And you've got 3 or 4 others that have been testing the waters for a while now. So if I had, I don't know.
I know exactly.
I'm wondering if Fractal won't go back to the well and redesign. Their latest case was not impressive. Corsair maybe, but Corsair is so wrapped up in RGB, and small form factor tends to not be RGB. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Corsair. NZXT's got their case out. Though I'm torn on that. It doesn't look like it's got as good of airflow as you would hope it would have.
I think it's going to be thermal take.
You think thermal take will be next? Well,
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if they do their typical modus operandi, I would say they might come out with a sandwich version. They might go real small.
I should get off before I say anything bad. And you should go eat lunch.
Okay. Guys, thank you for joining us. The whole of this will be posted on YouTube in a few days. Thank you all for coming out and joining us. Next month, you guys will get excited about who we're going to have next month. All I can say is we're going to be talking about sound, and we'll leave it there. But I've got a guest lined up for next month that you guys are going to love. We're going to have a great time. So until then, I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.